So let's now talk about the explicit and implicit claims. When we talk about explicit claims, these are claims in a written text which are obvious and have meanings that are apparent. Meaning to say that the meanings are actually directly stated, there are no hidden meanings, the meanings aren't hinted, the meanings aren't indirect. Again, it gives you the meaning of this certain claim, an explicit claim, that gives you the direct meaning. The meaning is obvious. Let's take a look at this example. A healthcare worker's means of transportation during the quarantine period is very much limited, which sometimes results into them walking to their workplaces. Now, this text is an example of an explicit claim, wherein you cannot think of any other meaning aside from it is a healthcare worker during a quarantine period, and the transportation of these healthcare workers are limited. That's why sometimes they walk to their workplaces. So it's there are no hidden meanings. It's very much there. It's very much direct that what is stated there, that is the meaning. Okay? So it is important to take note that explicit claims can be reflected through the main idea or the topic sentence. Most of the time, these claims are used when the writer wants his or her written work to be direct and be clearly understood. So again, this is our objective or our goal. Wherein in what we're learning in reading and writing deviates away from the creative side. Rather, we focus on the formal side of writing, and we want everything to be clearly implied, explicitly implied. Therefore, you have your explicit claims. Again, if we take a look at the example, you can observe that the meaning, again, is directly stated. No other meaning or definition uh, can really be drawn from this except from what is being stated. Again, if you've also observed in a much more deeper level, it already answers your 5 W's and 1 H, wherein the who, what, where, when, and then you have that healthcare workers during quarantine, and then how do they go to their workplaces, how was it limited during that time, because it results into them walking, so therefore it is limited. It shows that their transportation is limited. So again, going back to this text being explicit, again, we cannot draw any other meaning or any other meanings aside from what is being stated, directly stated in the text. Now, going from explicit to implicit, if we talk about implicit claims, rather implicit claims, these are claims in a text that are indirectly stated. Okay, so the meaning is usually hidden and is inferred through the use of figures of speech. So these are texts who loves to use symbolisms. Okay, now implicit claims either use symbolisms or context clues in order for the reader to decipher the underlying meaning of this certain text. Now, usually the meaning of these claims, the meaning of the implicit claims, can be decoded through the help of contextual analysis. We will talk about that in the later topic of this module, but let's take a look at these examples first. So I'll be flashing first example number 1, wherein it reads, "The journey towards the workplace was challenged due to the quarantine the country is currently under." Right? It may be similar to your first example, but there is still room to decode, which means it doesn't really fully answer the 5 W's and 1 H. So again, um, it's not only applicable to creative texts, but we can still break down texts that are not actually fully decoded or fully stated or clearly stated, because in your first example it doesn't show or clearly show the 5 W's and 1 H. Number one would be who. Whose journey? That's the number one. Whose journey was it to the workplace? And does it really, I mean, the what, right? The what and the how. What kind of journey towards the workplace? Is this the emotional side? Is this the physical side? See, there is still much more to be decoded. And it's not explicitly implied as the first one. So we can consider this as an implicit claim that maybe the writer is not just pertaining to the physical or the workers frontliners during the quarantine period, but if you actually search deeper, this may be also emotional as well, because um, ourselves can be a workplace. So you see, because it's not clearly stated, explicitly stated, there are so much more meaning to be decoded or to be for us to be drawn, what we can draw from this simple sentence. Again, it doesn't clearly state your 5 W's and your 1 H. And then the next would be, this would be leaning towards the creative writing side, where an example number 2 states, there were no sounds to be heard, yet their silent cries echoed within the nation. Deprived of rest, their right to be fought for. Listen to the weeping of our frontliners. Again, the meaning isn't clearly stated. Yes, we can get the, oh, those are the emotions of our frontliners, but it used a lot of figures and speech. It used figures of speech, and it has context clues for us to decode more. Again, the difference between explicit claims to the implicit claims is that when you read explicit claims, there is no further decoding to be done. Everything is clearly stated there. But when we talk about implicit claims, there are still meanings that can be decoded. It can either pertain to the realistic scenario, or it could be showing an imagery or a symbolism of a certain emotion, feeling, or a certain scenario, which you need to decode more. So that is the difference between explicit and implicit. And implicit claims, it is similar, they're similar to explicit claims, because they can be reflected through the main idea or the topic sentence. Okay, but again, the background of explicit versus implicit is, implicit leans towards more on the creative writing, fictional writing, or creative nonfiction, wherein implicit claims, symbolisms, context clues is much more apparent. In comparison to explicit claims, wherein we use that in formal writing, much more in formal writing, because we want everything to be clearly stated and to be clearly understood by our readers. We want to avoid, as much as possible, we want to avoid confusion. That's why we use explicit claims. So that is your explicit and implicit claims.